teleSUR English presents a new episode of China Now, a way media's production that showcases the culture, technology and politics of the Asian giant. In this first segment, we have the news of the passing away of former Premier Li Keqiang on October 27th, who had just retired from the post earlier this year on March. Also, we have the Israel-Palestine conflict and the Chinese government's condemnation against the actions that harm civilians. Let's see.
China Current is a weekly news talk show from China to the world. We cover viral news about China every week and also give you the newest updates on China's cutting-edge technologies. Let's get started. Hi, welcome to China Currents. I'm Chris. Before diving into the latest situation in Gaza, let's turn to a breaking news first. Former Chinese Premier Li Keqiang, who had just retired from the post earlier this year in March, passed away on October 27th. He was 68, and according to a report from China's state media, Li suffered a heart attack while he was in Shanghai. Li Keqiang served as the Chinese premier from 2013 to 2023. His previous career includes the vice premier and provincial governor of Henan and Liaoning, two highly populated provinces. The news of the sudden loss of an ex-national leader took Chinese people by surprise on an otherwise uneventful Friday morning. Alongside state media outlets, Chinese netizens are mourning in the comment sections of various threads, remembering the ex-premier for the challenges he weathered during the last years of his office, including the trade war waged by the US, COVID, and the Russo-Ukrainian conflict. Next up, let's turn to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. On October 23rd, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi held separate phone conversations with his Palestinian and Israeli counterparts. In both talks, Wang stressed China's condemnation against all acts that harm civilians and actions that violate international law, calling for an immediate ceasefire. He firmly reiterated to both sides that a two-state solution remains the only solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and advocated for a more authoritative, wide-ranging and effective international peace conference. In his talk with the Palestinian Foreign Minister, Wang Yi vowed to continue providing humanitarian aid to Palestine tailored to the needs of the people in Gaza. During the exchange with Israeli counterpart, Wang acknowledged that all countries have the right to self-defense, but emphasized that such actions should abide by international humanitarian law and protect the safety of civilians. Wang's statement aligns with his previous condemnation of Israel's military operation as beyond the scope of self-defense, referring to numerous attacks on Palestinian civilian targets. This diplomatic effort marks the first direct mediation by China since the escalation of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict earlier this month. A week prior, Wang Yi held phone talks with the US, Saudi Arabia, Iran and Turkey, all of which have significant geopolitical interests in the region. And throughout these discussions, Wang repeatedly emphasized that China has no self-interest in the Palestinian issue. Following the prelude to assure relevant parties, the conversation with Palestine and Israel demonstrate China's proactive step toward mitigating the situation from a humanitarian standpoint. Following the tension in Palestine, on October 25th, the Joint Naval Special Operations Training exercise between China and Saudi Arabia, Blue Sword 2023, began its maritime training phase. Following a two-week period of comprehensive basic and specialized training, participants from both sides are now embarking on exercises focused on rescue operations, reconnaissance missions, and logistical support. The training curriculum includes a range of courses such as helicopter fast roping, tactical group maneuvers, ship climbing exercises, drone operations, observation device handling, and ship-to-sea firing drills. China has deployed a landing ship equipped with 2 helicopters to actively participate in this collaborative maritime training endeavor. Despite Joe Biden's top aides scrambling on October 8th to reaffirm their commitment to the potential normalization of diplomatic ties between Saudi Arabia and Israel, the Blue Sword 2023 training commenced on October 9th, which is just 2 days after Saudi Arabia urged Israel to immediately halt the escalation with Palestine. Next up, let's take a look at diplomacy. On October 22nd, the Ministry of Commerce of China announced that China and Australia have recently conducted friendly consultations on their WTO disputes and reached an agreement for proper resolution. Ahead of the visit of the current Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese to China, consensus has been reached to resolve all three WTO dispute cases between China and Australia. Albanese has expressed intention to restore relations with China since he assumed office last year. For instance, on April 11th, China and Australia reached a consensus on the WTO dispute over barley through friendly consultations. As a result, on August 5th, the Chinese Ministry of Commerce terminated anti-dumping duties and countervailing duties on Australian barley. Australian Prime Minister Albanese is scheduled to visit China from November 4th to 7th, and Chinese experts believe that the current Sino-Australian relationship has moved beyond mere warming and can be described as rebooted, entering a positive trajectory. Next up, on October 26th, the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Washington, D.C., marking the first day of Wang's three-day U.S. visit. In a pre-meeting press conference, Wang stated that China and the U.S. need an in-depth and comprehensive dialogue to help reduce misunderstanding and stabilize the relationship. There will always be some noise in China-U.S. relations, Wang said. The public considers that Wang's visit to the White House will pave the path for a Xi-Biden meeting in San Francisco, where the Summit of Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation will be held next month. Next up, on October 24th, China's central government has announced the approval of additional 1 trillion yuan in sovereign debt issuance to bolster the country's economic recovery efforts. The move was officially ratified during the 6th session of the Standing Committee of the 14th National People's Congress, where the resolution on approving the issuance of sovereign debt and adjusting the central budget for 2023 was passed. This decision aims to provide financial resources to aid post-disaster reconstruction and addresses deficiencies in disaster prevention, mitigation, and relief efforts. China has experienced a series of severe weather events, including heavy rainfall, floods, and typhoons in various regions throughout this year. The country has also faced a growing frequency of extreme natural disasters, highlighting the need to strengthen its disaster management capabilities. The Ministry of Finance has stated that $68.5 billion will be allocated for immediate use this year, with the remaining $68.5 billion carried over for use in the following year. This targeted distribution of funds will contribute to the country's ability to withstand and recover from natural disasters. As China continues its path towards sustainable recovery and resilience, the approved sovereign debt will play a crucial role in promoting economic stability, facilitating reconstruction efforts, and enhancing disaster resilience across the country. Next up, at 8 p.m. on October 24th, the 2023 Tmall Double 11 Day Sale kicked off its pre-sale campaign. It's the world's largest online shopping event, and has consistently been a barometer for consumer trends and brand performance in China. This year's event revealed a surge in consumer spending, with over 1,300 brands witnessing a year-on-year sales growth exceeding 200%, and nearly 700 brands seeing their sales grow by more than 500% within just the first hour. While international brands such as L'Oreal, Guerlain, and Nike successfully broke the 1 billion yuan sales mark, many Chinese domestic brands also made it to the top-selling list. Chinese netizens argue that it demonstrates the increasing popularity of homegrown brands among Chinese consumers. There was once a time when Chinese consumers were willing to pay premium prices for foreign brands. However, the trend seems to be shifting. Today, Chinese brands are providing products that are on par and in some cases even superior to foreign counterparts. National pride is not a sole driving factor for this shift. Chinese companies have become more responsive to market trends, aligning closer with consumer needs and are more daring in their investments. This evolving landscape of Chinese retail suggests a growing local confidence and an increasingly competitive domestic market. Next up, on October 25th, China officially launched its new National Data Administration Agency to oversee the country's data strategy. The NDA will be led by the National Development and Reform Commission. The National Data Administration will coordinate data infrastructure development and promote sharing of data resources across government bodies. It will also oversee initiatives to build China's digital economy and society, taking over some responsibilities from the Cyberspace Administration. According to the State Council's reform plan last March, the NDA was proposed to integrate fragmented data and leverage technologies like AI. With the exponential growth in data volumes driven by technologies, data resources have become crucial to China's digital transformation goals. The National Data Administration aims to maximize value from this strategic resource. Next up, on October 23rd, the Chinese State Council announced the establishment of a pilot area for Digital Silk Road in Shanghai. According to customs statistics, China's cross-border e-commerce import and export volume reached 21.1 trillion yuan in 2022. At present, China has established bilateral e-commerce cooperation mechanisms with 29 countries across 5 continents. The Digital Silk Road will become a new channel for economic and trade cooperation. Shanghai is China's largest distribution center for import goods and a preferred gateway for international brands to enter the Chinese market. It leads the country in e-commerce transaction scale and is home to a number of leading domestic and international e-commerce companies. Chinese netizens argue that the establishment of the pilot area will strongly promote e-commerce exchanges between Shanghai and countries jointly building the Belt and Road Initiative and connect more overseas high-quality products to the Chinese consumer markets. Last but not least, at 11:14 Beijing time on October 26th, the Shenzhou 17 crewed spacecraft carrying Chinese astronauts Tang Hongbo, Tang Shengjie, and Jiang Xinling successfully lifted off, marking another milestone in China's crewed space program. The primary objective of this mission is to facilitate a crew rotation with the Shenzhou 16 team and enable a 6-month stay aboard China's Tiangong space station. During their tenure, Chinese astronauts will conduct a range of activities including scientific experiments, extravehicular operations, and routine maintenance tasks. This launch signifies the 30th flight mission of China's crewed space endeavor since its autonomous inception, and a 12th manned flight overall. Remarkably, China has maintained an impeccable safety record throughout its crewed space program, with 0 astronauts casualties since the maiden voyage of Shenzhou 1 in 1999. Li Keqiang, the spokesperson for China's crewed space program, emphasized China's preparedness to invite foreign astronauts for future Chinese space station missions. We extend a global invitation welcoming nations and regions dedicated to the peaceful utilization of outer space to collaborate with us and participate in our endeavors aboard the Chinese space station. Well, that's all for today. Thank you for watching this episode of China Currents. If you have any thoughts and comments about our show, please reach us at the email address below. I'm Chris, looking forward to hearing from you, and see you next time.
We'll go for a short break now, but we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to China Now. In this second segment, we have Threshold with some tech innovation and announcement that happened in China last week. Just as a new frontier of Sino-US competition, China's plans to implement a near-Earth asteroid defense mission, and the US target open are at SCV standards as a new front in tech war with China. Meanwhile, in Thinkers Forum, we have Cridi Opoku, the convener of the socialist movement of Ghana, talking about how the Belt and Road Initiative looks from a Pan-African perspective. Also in the Thinkers Forum are the Shan Wei-Wade and Bruno Massais, likewise talking about the Belt and Road Initiative. Let's have a look.
Hi, I'm Lisa and this is Threshold in China. Today we are going to share some exciting tech innovations and announcements that happened in China last week. Robots are coming. Tesla recently introduced its cutting-edge humanoid robot Optimus, and at the same time Xiaomi introduced Cyber One. The two companies reflect the larger picture of the fierce competition in robotics between China and the United States. Let's take a look at this new report that tells us where each country is at. The United States has been at the forefront of the robotic research. It has the largest number of first authors and institutions publishing papers in top journals, solidifying its dominance. Meanwhile, China has emerged as a rapidly developing force, securing the second position, overtaking Europe, Canada, and Japan. Data shows a changing of the guards, with China surpassing the US in 2022 in the number of first authors and institutions publishing in top journals. Hence, China is narrowing the research gap. Prominent Chinese universities such as Shanghai Jiaotong University, Tsinghua University, Huazhong University of Science and Technology, and Harbin Institute of Technology are making significant contributions. Keyword analysis shows that there are differences between China's and US research directions. From 2022 to mid-2023, China focused on deep learning, reinforcement learning, digital twins, cloud manufacturing, soft grippers, and technologies with variable stiffness. In contrast, the US zeroes in on safety collision avoidance, robot perception system, multi-robot system, and path planning. The focus area differ according to strategic priorities. China aims to transform manufacturing through innovative technologies. This will contribute to China's lead in industrial robot development. According to the IFR, over half of new installations last year occurred in China. Therefore, its main robotic research concentrates on areas facilitating advanced automation solutions. Deep learning and reinforcement learning are crucial for developing more autonomous robotic systems capable of complex tasks. Another focus has been on digital twins, which are virtual representations that allows the digital modeling of physical systems so they can perform model, test, and optimize processes remotely. This aligns with China's goal of transforming manufacturing through technologies like cloud-based factories. Soft grippers and variable stiffness mechanisms aim to make robots safer and able to interact with unpredictable environments, like in medical or logistic applications. Meanwhile, the US centers on safety technologies. Algorithm for navigation, perception, and collision avoidance are priorities, ensuring robust coordination and autonomous machine operating around human. The different focuses each country have on research reflect their economic goals and societal needs. We can expect the China-US tech war will intensify as the robotic field evolves. China has announced its plans for deep space exploration over the next 15 years. According to Wu Weizhen, chief designer of China's lunar exploration program, the country aims to carry out 10 major engineering missions across 3 areas: lunar exploration, planetary exploration, and launch vehicle technology. We have talked about the 4 lunar exploration missions in previous episodes, so if you're interested, the links are down below. Let's dive into the planetary exploration. China plans to launch Tianwen-2 in 2025 to sample an asteroid and fly by a main belt comet, bringing pristine out-of-Earth material back to Earth. China will also carry out its first ever near-Earth asteroid defense mission to address the small but potentially catastrophic probability of an asteroid hitting the Earth. China will perform a kinetic impact on an asteroid located millions of kilometers away, altering its trajectory and assessing the impact's effectiveness. Other planetary missions in the pipeline include Tianwen-3 to collect the first ever Martian samples and explorations of Jupiter and Uranus. The United States, through NASA, has a long history of successful missions to various planets, including Mars, Venus, and Jupiter. NASA's Mars rovers, such as Curiosity and Perseverance, have provided insights into the red planet's geology and potential habitability. The United States has also successfully landed multiple spacecrafts on Mars, including the InSight lander studying the planet's interior. China, on the other hand, has caught up in recent years. In 2020, China landed on Mars for the first time with their Tianwen-1 mission, which successfully placed a rover called Zhurong on the surface of Mars. The next major task of China focused on exploring the edge of the solar system. China plans to launch a new type of spacecraft that will reach the solar system's edge, 100 astronomical units away. This mission aims to contribute to humanity's understanding of the characteristics of the solar system's edge and its planet, and the exploration of aliens. To support these ambitious deep space endeavors, China aims to develop a super heavy lift Long March 9 rocket with 10-meter diameter cores and large liquid oxygen methane engines. This would increase China's launch capability to 150 tons in low Earth orbit. Regarding rocket technology, NASA has also been at the forefront for decades, with iconic rockets such as the Saturn V, which carried astronauts to the moon during the Apollo missions. In recent years, private companies like SpaceX have emerged as key players, developing innovative and reusable rocket systems like the Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. As a counterpart, China has been steadily advancing its rocket technology. The Long March series of rockets, developed by China's National Space Administration, has been the backbone of China's space program. These rockets have successfully launched various missions, including Lunar and Mars mission, and the Tianzhou cargo spacecraft for resupplying the space station. And they've just sent a new batch of astronauts to China's Tiangong space station on another Long March rocket. The nation's progress in deep space exploration over the past 2 decades has been remarkable. With that said, research benefits greatly from international collaboration, but the question is when this collaboration overcomes competition. Recently, US lawmakers urged to put restrictions on RISC-V, which is an open chip architecture standard increasingly embraced by China. RISC-V lets anyone customize computer processor design using its open instructions. Its flexibility has advantages. It reduces cost and allows custom chip for different needs. However, this openness has drawn the attention of US lawmakers who fear that it might pose a national security risk. They urge the Biden administration to regulate companies' involvement with RISC-V, potentially limiting its growth and use. Since RISC-V is an open standard specification, it cannot be prevented from being downloaded and used by anyone. So this raised the question of how the United States can regulate it, since it is almost impossible to do so. There is no monopolistic control on RISC-V standard, and this is the driving force behind this global adoption and a catalyst for the next phase of the chip technology revolution. However, US politicians contradict this trend by excluding themselves from the upcoming wave of transformation. So why are these politicians so scared? The underlying reason is that RISC-V disrupts the monopoly of the 86 and the ARM systems, creating a new ecosystem where the United States does not enjoy an absolute advantage. Currently, the Intel-developed 86 is the dominant chip design architecture for desktop and laptop computers, while the design architecture behind most smartphone chips in the world is controlled by ARM. RISC-V provides an open instruction set architecture to customize chip designs. Its flexibility is beyond established standards like 86 and ARM, and offer China a way to reduce foreign IP. Although RISC-V originated at UC Berkeley, China has become a major adopter. RISC-V's popularity in China is evident. According to statistics among the 22 senior member organizations in the RISC-V International Foundation, 12 are from China, such as Alibaba Cloud, Huawei, ZTE, and Tencent Holdings, and 7 are from the United States. Among the 179 strategic member organizations, 49 are from China, 41 are from the United States, and 43 are from the European Union. Furthermore, the mentioned RISC-V servers, 10GB switches, and other products are manufactured by Chinese companies. If the RISC-V ecosystem flourishes, the global processor landscape will no longer be monopolized by the United States. So, the US politicians are really concerned with losing their dominant position in the processor industry. However, what they have proposed could be counterproductive in achieving their stated goals. It risks dividing an otherwise open community, severing the tie between Chinese and US researchers and engineers. As Chinese firms and institutions continue to advance Risk 5, China is posed to shape the next generation of processor technology on its own terms. And that is all for today's Threshold. We hope you like this news section on science and technology in China. And as usual, we welcome your feedback and thoughts.
Good evening, comrades. It's a great honor to be invited back to Thinkers Forum. I've been asked to share a few brief thoughts on how the Belt and Road Initiative looks from a Pan-African perspective. I will try and be very brief. What does the BRI mean for Africa? First, the obvious. BRI is a massive visionary infrastructure program. It's warehousing, its road and rail systems, its air, land, and sea ports, its energy and power infrastructure across 3 large continents. It is also the cell towers, servers, and perhaps even foundries that can power, automate, digitize production, and make real-time communication and engagement of all the millions of people within the initiative possible. And of course, with infrastructure, there will be opportunities for additional soft technology investments from China and other participants, hopefully as joint ventures that transfer technology to our peoples. In practice, BRI also enables critical social infrastructure, hospitals and schools in particular, where we can train people to develop and use all this infrastructure and technology. As a result of Western exploitation over 5 centuries and a complete lack of integrated planning since independence, Africa has the poorest infrastructure in the world, both productive and social. What economic infrastructure there is mostly foreign private investment and often tied to former colonial masters and their industrial establishments. This gives them the power to dictate the pace of our development, or more often, our underdevelopment. Our infrastructure deficit allows Western companies to use their capital resources to expropriate our massive natural resources, leaving our people in poverty and despair. And it prevents us from making a rapid, measured transition to industrial production and development. A case in point is France's stranglehold over Nigerian uranium mining capacity. Its massive transfer pricing ensures that Areva pays negligible, if any, tax to the Nigerian people. And Niger, poor country that it is, effectively subsidizes the 30% of power generation that their uranium guarantees France. Niger itself, after 40 years of supplying 25% of the EU's uranium, second only to Kazakhstan, only has a 12% electricity penetration. Now, obviously, the infrastructure that is available to Niger through BRI will make a huge difference to living standards and to the prospects of the Nigerian people. Comrades, as the character of this imperialist infrastructure becomes more evident and more controversial, the West is investing now in military infrastructure. This infrastructure that surrounds our countries with the threat and reality of violence and domination. This is deployed to protect the status quo and to exclude others who, like China, would like to invest on more fair terms in Africa. BRI is a state-led policy, which means that it reflects the CPC's socialist internationalism and its commitment to global development and poverty eradication. It is executed by a combination of state-owned and private Chinese enterprises, and thus enjoys a significant solidarity component. We expect Chinese and other investors in BRI to make good returns on their investment, and China owes no apologies for this. We also expect Chinese businesses to benefit from the use of this new infrastructure in developing businesses in Africa. Again, no apologies. The point, however, is that this will not be on an exclusive Chinese colonial or neo-colonial basis, as BRI detractors love to suggest. And they suggest that because they themselves can see no other framework for international relations other than exploitation. BRI will not be paternalistic like Americans and Europeans who, having built the corrupt cultures of our middle classes, then turn around to seek to impose their supposed values as a condition for our development. Our states, and perhaps soon our continental institutions, will be able to determine holistically what priorities should be served within a planned development process. Africans will decide how we connect with the wider Silk Road. The sheer existence of the opportunity is knocking even the hardest heads together around the continent. In other words, BRI becomes a driver of regional integration, collective self-determination. It means that we too can tackle poverty and build prosperity. It holds open the door for building peaceful economic and political Pan-Africanism and taking a constructive position in the world and the management of its affairs. Soon, we hope also to see the agricultural research and development component of this massive project. President Xi committed to this recently at the China-Africa Leaders Forum in South Africa. There are many of us who hope that this initiative will focus on our nearly 1 billion peasant farmers and help uplift them from where they are today and develop agroecological technologies that can bring them into the global economy on their own terms, on secure, equitable, and a profitable basis that addresses both the growing global nutrition crisis, but offers them too modest prosperity and a chance to manage the transition to higher levels of production and to socialism on their own terms. So to sum up, BRI means civil infrastructure, and that means independence and self-determination. It means greater peace and security, the possibility of eliminating the structures, the infrastructure of destruction that the West is surrounding us with. It means a fillip to integration and dignity. Now, comrades, does the BRI change the dialogue between Africa and China? Yes, it does, in positive ways. It creates admiration and interest in Chinese solutions. It opens up in Africa consideration of other ways of organizing society, away from the neo-colonial institutions promoted by the West. It makes even the most backward leaders ask, how did China do it? Can we learn from China? And if China holds the course of open, principled engagement based on internationalist principles, its considerable influence in Africa can only grow. Are there challenges? Yes. BRI can only open a door. It is up to Africa to walk through that door and reset the terms of our development. Infrastructure acquisition has unfortunately been one of the major areas of corruption in our independent history. While we are fully aware of the decisive measures China under President Xi has taken to control private abuse of public office, these are struggles that we are still very much waging in Africa. And capitalists are capitalists. So there will continue to be challenges with some private Chinese investors and contractors and how they engage with the questionable integrity of many of our national procurement systems. China and its friends in Africa must be proactive in publicizing the integrity standards that exist in China and that are expected around BRI development, and in publicizing the checks and balances as these evolve, as we evolve these together. There's also a question whether Africa can absorb and properly utilize all the projects we so desperately need. Can we absorb them at the rate at which they appear to become available? Or do we need help in building up our public planning and management capacity? Can more of such assistance be available within the BRI framework? That's a challenge we have to address. Finally, Africa is heavily indebted. What can we do about the terms of BRI investment and related funding? What can we do about the current crisis that besets us? These are challenges that the overall program, together with its participants in Africa and increasing the youth of Africa and the progressive community in Africa, must focus on. There are problems that we must try and solve so that the BRI achieves its full potential in developing humanity for itself. Thank you very much, Comrade Chairman Eric, and good to see you again. And I'll end here. Thank you very much.
Bruno, welcome to China, welcome to Beijing. And as you know, we have just completed this major event, the 10 years anniversary of the BRI initiative. So many leaders from other countries came to Beijing, stay in this hotel. So what's your take on the whole about BRI, and how do you perceive this whole event as well? Yeah.
Well, it seems to be doing well. It is not dead. We read in a lot of Western media that it was dead. I was very worried because I wrote a book on the Belt and Road, and I want my book to survive. But it seems to be changing. I always thought it would be an evolving process with crises, with transformations. Seems to be a lot less about infrastructure. In my book, I already wrote that infrastructure would become secondary. By the way, I think there are conditions for the Belt and Road to succeed that are prior to infrastructure. They're about politics, culture. There has to be cultural and political understanding for the infrastructure projects to succeed. So what I noticed this time is that there was enormous focus on culture and politics and a lot less on concrete and construction.
And from Chinese point of view, we feel that with the Ukrainian crisis, somehow the EU or Europe as a whole have been somehow misled by the United States, the Chinese biased view. So where the Europeans' own interests, the other day I met an Italian friend in this forum. I said one major problem for Europe is immigration from the Middle East, from North Africa. So with Belt and Road, we try to help, develop Africa and the Middle East. As a result, there'll be less refugees to Europe. So why EU or EU members don't want to join BRI? I know there American pressure, and Italy is talking about quitting the EU. I think it's something goes wrong here. My personal view. What's your take?
Well, BRI was interpreted, and I think correctly, as a project of power, that it would increase Chinese influence. I don't think Chinese officials and intellectuals deny this, that the BRI will increase China's influence in the world. That is part of the purpose. So there was a lot of resistance in Europe to the idea that this project could increase China's influence, and a process of geopolitical competition started. Europe now wants to have its own BRI. These are the dynamics, and I think are going to be very difficult to avoid. Each major bloc wants to have its own projects. I think that's what explains why Europe is not joining the BRI. We want to have our own BRI.
Yeah.
You could say that China was successful in the sense that it showed the whole world the importance of a project like this.
Yeah.
But I don't think it will be able to convince European countries to join.
And anyway, now over 150 countries have joined.
Right.
And the total investment has been more than 1 trillion, some people say even $2 trillion, both Chinese and non-Chinese. So the projects, despite all the challenges, opportunities on the whole, are moving up. And this trend, I think, will continue. Now, I read your articles about Eurasianism, about civilizational state, about rise of civilizational discourse around the world. So could you say a bit on your view concerning civilizational state, civilization discourse? Why at this particular juncture more talk about this? Yeah.
I think as human beings, we are profoundly dissatisfied with the idea that history is finished, that nothing new will happen. And it's much more appealing to think that different parts of the world have different visions, and that there is a dialogue, there is a learning process, and that history continues. So the sense that liberalism was the end, and everyone would join and everyone would have the same view, is a very frustrating view, which is slowly disappearing. We now have different projects in different parts of the world, and the Chinese project is a project to be taken very seriously. One can agree with certain elements of the Chinese project for the future, and one can disagree with other elements. But I think the sense that civilizations and the difference between civilizations is a good thing is very important. And second, the sense that civilizations are fundamentally forms of human thought, of practical human thought. And so there is no reason for civilizations to clash. Usually we have a clash of nationalisms. That's a different thing. But civilizations should not clash, they should communicate. This is why I've been interested in the Belt and Road from the beginning. And why I wish the Belt and Road all the best, because a China that is open to the world, that is curious about the world, is a much better China for everyone than a China that would be closed. So why should we be critical of a project that is fundamentally a way for China to open up? That is, I think, where we are. Of course, it will be very tricky to navigate this world where there are disagreements. But in the end, it's a better world than a world where we all agree.
I remember I was reading some time ago your thesis on Western civilization. And I remember you said something like that, this people are, some like French president and some Hungarian prime minister, they were talking about this European civilization, Western civilization, and return to its own roots. Yet some of them want to go to the roots of the Enlightenment. Then you said something like this, again, this is a problem, if we want to continue this Enlightenment tradition, it's still about universal appeal rather than return to your own roots. Could you elaborate a bit on this view, if my memory serves me right?
Yes, I think we should give up on this ambition of having universal rules that apply to everyone. Because what that means is that the rules are going to be rather empty and formal, and not rules that can satisfy human aspirations. So we are, I think, in the process of leaving that behind. The idea of completely neutral rules is impossible. what we're realizing is that many parts of the world don't even understand that project or they resist it because rules that look neutral at first, they turn out not to be neutral. I mean, a very simple example is when do you have a day of holiday in the week?
Yeah.
Of course, a Muslim would want a Friday, and a Christian would prefer the Sunday, and it's not possible to have a neutral rule.
Yeah.
We should, of course, embrace these differences and allow for them to grow in depth and for civilizations to develop rather than trying to replace them with a completely abstract and neutral framework.
Do you think eventually European Union can become a kind of civilizational community or civilizational state?
It is becoming. It is becoming. It is meant to overcome nationalism, but it's no longer in the direction of universalism. It's in the direction of a civilization state. That countries join on the basis of their civilizational affinity. For example, we see now that Russia does not have that civilizational affinity, and perhaps it has a civilizational affinity with China, and Ukraine has that civilizational affinity. So we see that civilizational states are growing and coalescing, solidifying. I can even tell you what I think the European civilizational state is about. I think it's about a certain form of anarchism. Europeans don't like state power. This is a big difference between China and Europe. In China, state power is seen as a good thing for reasons that we can...
Necessary virtue, not a necessary evil.
That's right,
the case.
Exactly. For Europeans, for a long time, for many centuries, the state is something that in the end one should abolish, if possible. And I think the European Union, in a sense, is not a state. Is a regime of rules, automatic rules, but not a state. So we may even have succeeded in abolishing the state in Europe. So this is not for everyone. This is not for the Chinese, have a different tradition. But for us Europeans, there's of course a set of ideas that appeal to us.
And one final question, if there is this European civilizational community or civilizational state, what will be the position of religion? I know it's very controversial because we have so much diversified population, and this whole idea of European has a Christian tradition is controversial. Do you think that will be included in your idea of European civilizational community or state?
I think, to be honest, we have overcome religion in Europe. Perhaps in China too. There is some commonality there. Religion survives, but as a personal experience, as a psychological experience, not as a truth anymore. Of course, as liberalism is in crisis in Europe, people are looking for something to replace it. Religion is sometimes offered as an alternative. Until we find a better alternative, a European civilizational state, we're going to continue looking for a solution in religion, looking for a solution in liberalism. I don't think they will work. And Hungary, which represents a little bit of that return to religion, is not a majority voice in Europe, is not taken very seriously. And I think Europe has already moved beyond religion.
Good. So, I enjoyed this conversation very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And this was another episode of China Now, a show that opens a window to the present and the future of the Aishan Yayan. Hope you enjoy it. See you next time.